Dave Talks Comics, Episode 23. Dave Talks Comics is a podcast on the subjects of comic books and cartoons. I talk about comics I have read and cartoons I have watched. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com, on Twitter at Dave Talks Comics. Email can be sent to dave@davetalkscomics.com. I talk from my notes on these comics. I don't go panel by panel. I try to do more than just summarize the stories. This is not a spoiler-free podcast. Dave Talks Comics is not a member of the Spoiler-Free Podcast Network. I try not to spoil everything, but in the process of talking about these comics, I will almost certainly spoil them in some way. On this episode, I will be talking about the Generation Saga. This will be the second of 3 installments. In the first installment, I covered Infinity Inc. numbers 1 through 4. This time around, it'll be issues 5 through 7. And then I talk about All-Star Squadron, why I like it so much, and the things that influenced me that kind of pointed me in the direction of liking comic book stories that take place during World War II. Infinity Incorporated issues 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so issue 4 ended with this moment which was foreshadowed on the cover, more than foreshadowed, basically revealed on the cover of, oh no, the Justice Society is dead, and issue 5, the cover shows, oh no, the Justice Society is alive, and they've killed the Flash. So that's basically where this issue begins. So issue 4 ended with them thinking that Justice Society was dead, and the mayor of this town wants to conduct an autopsies on them. They're in this small town in Colorado, which is where the members of the Justice Society that are dead were lured, and these are Wonder Woman, the Atom, the Flash, Robin, Green Lantern, and Hawkman, and they were lured there by Superman. So the JSA is still alive. And what you get, basically what happens is the Flash runs out there from New York, Gotham, and tells them the story which originally appeared in All-Star Comics number 36 and apparently was reprinted in Blue Ribbon Digest number 3, which would have been fairly current at the time that this issue originally came out back in 1984. Of this stream of ruthlessness called Koehaha or something like that, Koehaha, all written as one word. And apparently it seems to drown people, but in reality they don't drown, they come back to life, except for they're now ruthless. Ruthless. And they just love using this word, and they use this over and over again to refer to these, that they've turned ruthless. No other adjective, it's ruthless. So the Flash, warns them about this, that they must be still alive, and then they go to, meanwhile, the mayor, who, by the way, looks like, at least in his first appearance, looks like a dead ringer for Jonathan Winters. apparently has ordered an autopsy. And so you get some rather gratuitous shots of Wonder Woman basically naked on the autopsy table, but then she comes back to life and deals with the doctor who's about to start slicing her open. And then the Flash shows up and tries to help things out, but the members of the JSA who seem to be dead are alive now. They put back on their uniforms and they beat up the Flash, practically killing him. And then the only other thing that happens really in this issue is Brainwave Jr. and the Star-Spangled Kid go to investigate a lead in this case and wind up meeting the Ultrahumanite. And that's basically where the story ends. One other thing, I want to talk a little bit about the letters page. On the letters page, there's a couple letters from people who, one's named Jim Harmon and the other is named Ron Foss. And both of them were apparently people that Roy Thomas, the writer of this, has known for quite some time. And and people who Roy Thomas got his start in comic books first as a writer for a lot of fanzines, or at least a few fanzines. And apparently these were other people who did similar stuff, although I don't think they ever got into comic book writing. And he also references, Amazing Heroes number 36 in this letters page. And Amazing Heroes was a fanzine which, back in the early 1980s, it ran for, I think, about 200 issues or so. And there was a preview in there of the Infinity Incorporated series. And he mentions that there. Okay, so moving on to issue number 6. Oh, wait, and then also there's at the end of these issues, they've been having like a pinup and a page giving a little bit of information about one member of Infinity Inc. each issue, and this issue, it's Jade. So the next issue, the cover shows the Infinitors having to looking at a wanted poster for the members of the JSA. And in this issue, the big things in this issue are you get a showdown between JSA, the JSA on the rampage is how I'd put it, and you get a showdown first between Power Girl and Superman, because they're kind of matching these heroes up, the younger generation to their compatriots in the older generation, and so Power Girl and Superman are the only two survivors of Krypton. And so there's a showdown there in Metropolis. And then the other thing is Huntress tracks down Robin, and Robin has gone back to Gotham Prison. And okay, so Superman, it looks like, I can't remember if it's revealed I think it's revealed in this issue, or maybe it's the next one. But he's decided he wants to take down Metropolis. He's going to tear it apart. So you get the beginning of a fight there, but it doesn't end. But in the case of Robin gets tracked down by the Huntress. He's at Gotham Prison. He's decided he's going to kill the guy who killed his parents, Boss Zuko, who is now an old man, very old, in his 80s, in very bad shape physically. He's in the prison hospital. And you get a pretty bloody fight between Robin and Huntress. I mean, he basically smashes her face into something. You get the blood pouring out of her nose, and but she manages to stop him before he stops Zuko, before he kills Zuko. And then finally, you get back to this encounter between Brainwave Jr., the Star-Spangled Kid, and the Ultrahumanite, and you get a recap of what happened in the Ultra Epic, which was All-Star Squadron issues 21 through 26 and annual number 2. So if you haven't read those, this would help there. And then you get a fight between the Ultrahumanite and the two Infinitors, which doesn't end entirely successful for the good guys. And then let's see, on the letters page, on the letters page you get some speculation. You're finally starting to get some letters from people who've actually read Infinity Incorporated #1 and not just feedback from the Ultra Epic or from, I guess, the preview in Amazing Heroes #36. And I guess the thing of note that I thought was most interesting was you get some speculation about who, if Jade and Obsidian are the kids or the children of the Green Lantern, Alan Scott, then who was the mother? And one person who writes in theorizes that it's the Harlequin, who was a villain that the Green Lantern fought back in the Golden Age. And somebody else speculates that it's the Phantom Lady. And I guess I could see that, with her blackout ray. Maybe that's, as far as Obsidian, because Obsidian kind of turns to shadow. So maybe that's why this person's thinking that. I'm not sure who it is. I think it might be the Harlequin, but I'm not sure. And I'm sure that's been rewritten plenty of times. And then finally you get the pin-up, and this time it's Obsidian, and you get a stats page about him. So that's it for issue number 6. And then issue number 7 is, let's see. Okay, so on this you get, on the cover you have the showdown between Power Girl and Superman. Superman looks like he's about to kill Power Girl. And then once you get into the issue, which you get in the beginning, you get this nice 2-page, this nice splash page on pages 2 and 3, kind of explaining where things are at from the perspective of the Ultrahumanite, and he kind of highlights each one of the battles. One of the things I forgot to mention in issue 6, one of the characters who shows up when Power Girl returns to Metropolis and faces off against Superman. Before she faces off against Superman, she runs into this journalist, Andrew Vinson, who was also, this is not his first appearance. He originally appeared in Power Girl's appearances in Showcase. Power Girl I think she first appeared in All-Star Comics, in the All-Star Comics revival. But then she appeared in Showcase numbers 97 to 99, and I believe Andrew Vinson, he's a television reporter, and what's happened is there's this big bubble force field kind of around Metropolis, and nobody can get in or get out, and it's kind of strange. He's stuck on the outside, but he's a Metropolis reporter for UBS. I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke or what, but or what it stands for. Universal Broadcasting Service? Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe an early rival to CNN. So, first you get the big battle in this issue between Superman and Power Girl, and that goes not so hot for Power Girl. She goes at it, but Superman's a little too tough for her. Ends up beating her pretty good in the same way that Robin beat Huntress pretty good, except for Huntress was actually able to take down Robin. So in the end, Power Girl flies off and leaves Superman laughing because you see he's turned ruthless. And then the rest of the issue is kind of focuses on the Infinitors who track down Wonder Woman and Hawkman. And basically they've flown from, they were in Colorado where the JSA members were drowned and then came back to life. And so they go to Virginia to the home, to Wonder Woman's home. And I can't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode or not, or the last time I talked about this or not, but she is married to Wonder Woman is married to Steve Trevor on Earth 2. And so they go to their home, and Fury is looking for clues as to where her mother might have gone. And so she looks through some old scrapbooks, some old photos, and she's trying to figure out, well, what would her mother do now that she's turned ruthless? And then some of the others show up, but it turns out that Silver Scarab has the answer, and he finds this diary entry. He's broke into his mother's diary, and his mother is Shira Hall, who used to be Hawkgirl, and I don't know why he would break in and read his mother's diary unless she left it lying out with intending for, but it looks like he ripped it out of her diary, so I don't know. But there's something in there about an exhibit at the Met of an Egyptian exhibit at the Met. So items from an archaeological dig, something along those lines. And if you know anything about Hawkman, if you should know anything about Hawkman and Hawkgirl of Earth 2, it's that they are reincarnations of a number of people, but two of them originally were Prince Khufu, I think, and I can't remember what her name was, but they were Egyptian royalty. And so and Carter Hall, the Hawkman, and Shira Hall have been archaeologists. So they Wonder Woman and Hawkman break into the Met and are going to steal this stuff. They get into a fight. The Infinitors show up, and Steve Trevor shows up at the same time. And in the process, Steve Trevor practically gets killed. Hawkman is captured. Wonder Woman apparently what she was trying to do was get her hands on some artifact that would give Steve Trevor immortality. Because even though she's aged very slowly. She does have gray hair, but she's aged very slowly. She's still in excellent shape. But he is not. But in the process, she almost kills him accidentally while trying to get her hands on these artifacts. Let's see, was there anything else? So the only other thing, I guess, is the letters page. There's a mention of America versus the Justice Society, which was a miniseries, a 4-issue miniseries done by Roy Thomas, and I believe penciled by, I'm not sure if that was, actually, you know what, I don't think it was penciled by Jerry Ordway, because in this letters page, they say it's going to be done by Raphael Kayanan, whose name I am not familiar with, but apparently he also worked on Firestorm. I think the covers were by Jerry Ordway. And there's also some talk about the All-Star Comics revival from the 1970s. And apparently, Roy Thomas had some deal with DC to do a JSA-related miniseries every year for the next 3 years, and this was in 1984. But as far as I know, JSA versus America versus the Justice Society was the only miniseries, JSA-focused miniseries, that Roy Thomas did. And then there was later a special, The Last Days of the Justice Society, and that was post-crisis. America versus the Justice Society, I think, was the pre-crisis or at the same time of crisis. It kind of was a follow-up on what happened after their run on All-Star Comics and why they kind of faded away. And it was kind of like the McCarthy hearings. And I want to reread that, and I may do that. And if I do, I will probably talk about it on a future episode of Dave Talks Comics. Let's see. As far as the letters page goes, the only other thing is there's a letter in here from somebody questioning, critical of Power Girl's personality and thinking that she's too one-dimensional. And Roy Thomas kind of defends her, and it's not so much a defense of her as much as it is a defense of the idea that heroes don't all have to be perfect, that not everybody is going to be perfect, and that's kind of his. I guess I don't know if he's deflecting or just trying to keep somebody, just respond to this, but. And he also responds to somebody else who questions whether the scene in Infinity Incorporated number 2, where the Infinitors get into a fight with some locals at a fast food shop, whether that was, is the word racist? Yeah, whether it was bordering on being racist. And he doesn't think so. And he says he's not going to apologize for the way the characters were portrayed. So that's that. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and that's I've really been enjoying this so far. I really think this storyline is better done than the Ultra Epic. The way it's been paced and played out. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's much better than the Ultra Epic. And I noticed that while she's not credited as writer, Dan Thomas, who was Roy Thomas's wife at the time, and they may still be married, I'm not sure, has been credited as co-plotter throughout this storyline. And so I don't know if maybe just Roy learned more from what he did with the Ultra Epic, although it's not like that was the first story he'd ever written, or maybe his wife had some impact on the way this story is being written and paced, because the Ultra Epic was much more verbose and much, I don't know, it was just all kinds of stuff just thrown in, and it was not, I did not enjoy it when I reread it as much as I did the first time. And I'm enjoying this. I think it's very well paced, and it's very well. I don't think they're throwing everything at you and jumping these crazy jumps from scene to scene to scene. I think it's much better written, and I wonder if it's because somebody else was helping him, because his wife was giving him some input on how to plot this out, which is what she's credited as being co-plotter. One more thing. On the cover of Infinity Incorporated number 7, it looks like Superman's about to kill practically, or he looks like he's beaten up Power Girl pretty good, and he's about to hit her again. And there's two characters in the background who, I don't know, could almost be interpreted as being Ma and Pa Kent. Maybe I'm reaching a bit here. But it makes me wonder about the status of Ma and Pa Kent on Earth 2 at this point. I don't know if they're still supposed to be alive or what. My guess would be no. I mean, because after all, Superman at this point has been active for 40 years. So I suppose they could still be alive. But they did have a history kind of killing off characters bit by bit on Earth 2 over the years. I mean, Batman of Earth 2 was dead by this point. Catwoman was dead. I don't know. So anyway, that's it for Infinity Inc. issues 5, 6, and 7. All-Star Squadron, why it's a great series, why it was a great series for me. A while back when I first started talking about All-Star Squadron, I said that I might record something on why All-Star Squadron was especially suited, a good fit, a good match for me. And so now I'm finally getting around to that. When I was growing up, we didn't have. I mean, we had television, but we didn't have. I certainly didn't have a television in my bedroom. We only had one for a number of years, And we didn't have cable TV, and there was no such thing as satellite at that point. Even cable was rather new. I mean, we're talking about like the early 80s, early to mid 80s. And I don't think they had cable actually where I lived. So I grew up, I didn't watch a whole lot of TV, but I did listen to a certain amount of radio. And encouraged by my parents and my father's memories, my father was in his 40s when he got married. So he grew up at a time before there even was television, when there was just radio and movies. And he used to talk about some of these shows, and I think eventually my mother bought us some of these cassettes or things like that of some of these old radio programs. I can remember, and certainly records as well. I can remember us having some things, recordings of things like The Shadow, Tarzan, The Green Hornet, Superman, Flash Gordon. I remember a particular Superman story. There was a long one. It was long in that it was several parts. I think it was on records, LPs, and 33 and a third. And it was, I want to say it was 16 parts, but I don't think each part was more than 15 minutes each. And it had to do with it wasn't a time machine. It was a device that could hear sounds from the past, and I can't remember exactly how they used it, but the inventor of it was Dr. Roebling, and I honestly at this point I don't really remember that much about it. I remember them turning it on and listening to to the Gettysburg Address, for instance, at one point, and I think that was a demonstration. And then there was some criminals got involved. There was no supervillains, but and then I remember there was a story from The Shadow where it had something to do with a saboteur. And of course, this was all World War II era stuff. And this is partly why it jives well with the All-Star Squadron, which of course was set during World War II. And there was a saboteur. There was something to do with a submarine. And I think somebody had been duped or blackmailed into helping the saboteur build something, a weapon or something like that. And I think his name was Joseph Hart. And there was this line where the guy realized Joseph Hart realized what he'd done. He decided he's going to kill himself, and the Shadow saying, "Don't do it, Joseph Hart, don't do it." And we used to say that. We listened to that cassette quite a bit on trips that we would take, and it was one of those lines that got repeated in the family quite a bit. But so there was a lot more. Even aside from that old time radio, I used to listen to. I mean, I had an AM radio. I did not have an FM radio, AM FM. I just had an AM radio, and I used to listen to things like Larry King late at night, on the radio. This is once again we're talking early mid 80s. Whatever I could pick up on the radio. And then there was also, the other thing was my father used to take me and my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, to movies when we were much younger. And this would have been like the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And I can remember him taking us to shows like, and these were, like a repertory theater where they show, old movies, things like Robin Hood, starring Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone, and at least one Marx Brothers film. I believe he took us to see The Big Store, but I'm not sure. And Harold Lloyd, who was actually a silent film star, and Bridge on the River Kwai, which is an excellent World War II film if you've never seen it. I think Alec Guinness won the Academy Award for that. I think so. He was certainly in it. And then going into the 80s, the early 80s, and this would have been about the time that the Well, actually, before I get to that, let me also say that I think there was also a certain amount of nostalgia for World War II on television at that point. And some of these shows I was seeing in reruns, so this was probably the early 80s, and these were shows from the 70s, but there was things like Rat Patrol, which was set in North Africa, and I think it was called Baba Black Sheep, which was set in the Pacific, and it was about a group of, it was based on a real unit, the Black Sheep Squadron, who were Marine aviators. And then, of course, Hogan's Heroes also, although that wasn't serious, that was a comedy. It was a sitcom of sorts. And then the other thing was Matinee at the Bijou. And Matinee at the Bijou was this program which they ran on, I believe it was Channel 32, which is one of our local public television stations here in Washington, D.C. And Matinee at the Bijou, what they would do is they would kind of package together, just like they would package together a movie serial, a newsreel, maybe a cartoon, and then a short film. And these were all old stuff from like the 30s, which was the way, as I understand it, that even up into the 40s and maybe the early 50s, I think they used to do this. So you would go because people didn't have television, you would go to the movies to get all these things, and they would give you a little bit of each. So at Matinee at the Bijou, you get like one episode of a movie serial, and it would be like 10 or 15 minutes. And honestly, I really can't remember any. I don't think there was any big name movie serials like Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers or anything like that. But there was some. I can definitely remember some kind of sci-fi. Like there was one with, I think, something like an undersea kingdom or something like that. But all of these things kind of contributed to, and kind of in a fake way made me nostalgic for and interested in the 1940s. You know, what was going on at that time, because that's what I was seeing. I wasn't really seeing a lot of other stuff. And of course so you then add All-Star Squadron into that mix, and it fits in very well with all that. So that's my little origin story of why All-Star Squadron was a good series at the time that it first appeared, and during its run for me. That's it for episode 23 of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com or tweet them to Dave at DaveTalksComics. You can email your questions or comments to Dave at DaveTalksComics.com.